And welcome to season 2, episode 2 of the QCast. And I'm really excited to have a new guest on the show, and the guest that's the head men's basketball coach of the #1 ranked team in the country. And that's Josh Merkel of Randolph-Macon. Josh, it's been a crazy last couple years. It's been a tough stretch, but boy, you got to feel excited here coming into 21-22 and everything going on. How are you doing today?
Yeah, doing great. And thanks, Bob, for having me on and showing D3 the love that you're showing. D3 can get a bad rap sometimes. So I love bringing some attention to the great players, coaches, and people around this game. But doing great. We're 5 practices in. We're excited for more of a normal season. We're excited for some fans in the stands and just, to have it. To be playing for a championship at the end of this thing, provided that, nothing changes at this point is exciting for everybody.
Randolph-Macon is a traditionally really strong program from a really strong conference, the ODAC. You're located in Ashland, Virginia, and you've had incredible success at Randolph-Macon, Josh. This will be your 7th year. And, if I just look at the last several years, last year was the strange COVID year. You guys were 12-0, but you get to the year before that, which also didn't finish, and we'll get into that season. 28-2, 15-1 in the ODAC, 18-19, 27-4, 15-1 in the ODAC, 17-18, 18-8, 12-4. I mean, what a stretch of success that you've had. Just talk a little bit here as you enter this season, looking back at the past several and how strong your program has been.
Sure. Well, I mean, super fortunate. Like you said, this tradition has spanned decades, from Paul Webb to Hal Nunnally to Mike Rhodes to Nathan Davis. And so to be a part of that tradition of excellence, to be connected to those guys that have been before me. And those guys won because they had great players. And so we've got this tradition of great players that work really hard when they're here, that make it about the team. And so we've attracted a group of guys that are about the right things, about getting better and development when they get here. And so one of the biggest reasons for that success is a defensive identity, getting guys that buy in defensively. I think our best players are our best defenders. That's not always the case, but they're also some of our hardest workers. And so it's a testament to having guys like that, and also having guys that play their role, become all-stars in their role. You get a taste of winning and you want to keep on doing it. And then you start finding out what it takes. And we've been able to continue to attract guys that, and I'm not saying it's perfect, but that want to be here, that want to work, that enjoy doing it, and that have become really connected and learned a lot about themselves along the way. So it's been a fun journey. But, Bob, you didn't talk about the first year. The first year I had here taking over after Nathan, who they went 28-2 and just had a phenomenal team. And I worked for Nathan Davis, and he's a phenomenal coach. And so it was like, I remember working for him, Bob, and saying, I would never want to be the guy that comes after this guy. I swear to you. I said that as I was working for him. And then I don't know, I must have forgot somewhere along the way and became that guy. And it was a struggle that first year, but we learned a lot. And we had some great guys that stuck with the process, even though we weren't where we wanted to be. And it's helped pave the way for this current group.
I think any transition like that, and you mentioned that first year, 15-6, and you were 13-14, 8-8 in the ODAC, even in the best programs, I think what you see when there's a coaching transition, that there's going to be some bumps along the road. It's very rare that you go from one coach to the next and the new guy is, 28-2. So it's certainly a process, but what a process it's been. I want to talk about this crazy stretch of time here during the pandemic, because I don't think there's a program more than Randolph-Macon that's been in the middle of this thing. And what I mean is that, in 1920, you're sitting there, you come off a 28-2 season, 15-1 the ODAC. You beat Wesley, and then you beat TCNJ. You're sitting there in the Sweet 16, getting ready to play Yeshiva on a Friday night. And that was one of the most anticipated games. That Sweet 16 was incredible. I can still remember the bracket because I was fired up about North Central and WashU, and I was fired up about Elmhurst and Pomona Pitzer.
Mhm.
and Mount Union and Wittenberg. They were on the other side of you. Yeshiva had traveled to Ashland, Virginia. I believe they were in Ashland.
They were there.
Tell me about the moment that you learned that the dream was dying here, that there would not be a conclusion to that tournament. Where were you, and what was that moment like?
Yes, I will remember it vividly the rest of my life. But all week you had been hearing about things. Well, even Hopkins the weekend before wasn't allowed to have
Yeah.
fans, and we were fortunate to have fans, and it was an unbelievable turnout and sold out crowd. And I remember thinking, I wonder, we need to make sure that our guys can handle that. So we started talking Monday about no fans, and then we might have found out Tuesday that sure enough, no fans. And I felt really good that wasn't going to be a reason. We could have still lost, but that wasn't going to be the reason, is no letdown because of that. And then as the week went along, I remember Thursday, we practiced early, 12 o'clock. We had like a noon break, and 12-1, my whole goal, let's get out of here healthy. And sure, we get to 1 o'clock, we end practice. And one of my players comes and says, Coach, did you see the Big Ten just canceled their tournament? Like, they kicked teams off the court. And in my mind, I'm thinking that is not good. That is
Right.
not good for this game happening tomorrow. And then we went home, and it might've been 5 o'clock that I got the news, that not only the game wouldn't happen, but that the season was essentially over. And so we told the guys we were scheduled to do breakfast, pregame meal that next morning. And so we went and did that and had some closure. We basically celebrated the seniors. We had a video ready to go with, some baby pictures from the seniors, and brought it back. And it was healing for me. It was good to see some laughs and some tears. Our seniors were incredible. Bob, I honestly handled it, inspired me to kind of handle it the right way. I was thinking a lot about my guys, and it's a tough thing, but control what you can. I love the Stoic philosophy of let's just control what we can. But it was a hard thing. And I think 10 years from now may get even harder for some of those guys as you think about the what ifs. But we can also use our imagination and just pretend that we won it all.
And what a bizarre way for a season to end. Usually it ends on the floor. This time it ended with someone telling you that it was all over. I'm curious, I know it's 2 seasons ago now, but since there wasn't closure from that year, the Yeshiva matchup was such an anticipated one because they're a new player, they're a new power player to the scene. And you're talking about a team that's got maybe, in my opinion, the best player in Division III now, this season, where he's developed, in Ryan Terrell. And at the time, it was 2 years ago. They also have another All-American, Gabriel Leifer. That's a really unique matchup, maybe a little bit of undersized 5 that is one of the best passing big guys I've ever seen. And then they've got all these shooters.
Yeah.
Not asking you for your whole game plan. I'm just curious what your thoughts were heading into that Yeshiva game. Certainly you had game planned them and you were ready to go, but what were your thoughts going into that game?
Well, I mean, extremely impressed. Elliot, how he's coaching that motion is unbelievable. And it was really hard for us to guard all week in practice, to the point of our scout team was running it and killing us. And I'm like, man, why aren't we running this type of offense? Is how good it was. Our game plan was hopefully, we've been in some battles and we had some battle tested guys, and hopefully pressure, like we had to pressure. If you don't pressure them enough, then they're going to pick you apart and make you look silly on defense. And that I was excited about that, seeing how our pressure defense, and we had a pretty good defense at the time, at least ranking wise, goes up against the number 1 offense. But they were every bit of that. I mean, we called them the Warriors from 4 years ago with how they passed and how they understand the game, and all 5 guys really know how to play. He's done a phenomenal job.
And so, that season comes to an end, and we talked about that. And then last season was a very bizarre season. Many leagues didn't even play. Many leagues didn't play. A lot of, many schools didn't play, but a lot did. I can't remember the number, but it was over 200 men's basketball programs that played, including you guys. What was last year like? It was I've talked to Illinois Wesleyan coach Ron Rose a lot of times, and I said, as a fan, it was the most stressful season I'll ever have, because you were excited about, say, the Illinois Wesleyan Wheaton game, but you didn't know until you got a text that, okay, we're on the bus heading north, that the game would even happen. So like, what was last year like?
Well, bizarre is a great word to use. I don't know. There was some gratitude though for the fact that, like you said, there were 200 teams that didn't play. We got to play. We got to practice. It wasn't perfect. We were practicing with masks. That was crazy. But it was just more that sense of, we take a lot of things for granted. We tried to take this approach that, that it used to be a guarantee that the season would end with a loss. Well, from the year before, that's no longer a guarantee. It used to be a guarantee that, you would be playing for a championship, and that's not a guarantee. So we just tried to take it one day at a time, control what we could, and enjoy kind of the nuance of the season. In other words, like, I think Bridgewater somebody couldn't play because of COVID. They got knocked down, and we were scrambling for a game, and Bridgewater's like, yeah, you can come here and play us. And so 0-day prep, go play Bridgewater. Same thing happened with Hamden Sydney later in the week. And so, just kind of this adjust and adapt mentality. We ended up playing Virginia Wesleyan on a back-to-back, which would never happen. We drove there on a Friday. We got stuck in terrible traffic and ended up being late. And then they came back here on the Saturday, and we got to play. We ended up playing Bridgewater 3 times because they were willing to play. So, and we're fortunate, 8 of our 12 teams got to play in the ODAC tournament, but again, 4 teams got knocked out due to COVID. And so you feel for those players and coaches. And bizarre because we got the 5th seed,
Right.
Just how it all worked out. And so again, to go on the road and win a championship on the road was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think you were rated like, I don't know, either 1st or 2nd in the country, and you were the 5th seed in your own conference tournament. So that was another fun thing about the COVID season. Weren't you guys shut down for about 2 or 3 weeks as well last season?
Yeah. And so, not that I guess it really doesn't matter, but we didn't have a single COVID case all season, Bob. I do, I'm proud of the guys for that. Now, some of it's out of control. I would not be proud if someone did get it, but we were fortunate, I guess you could say. But the school had a certain amount of cases.
Right.
So the school sent everyone home, or you could stay on campus, but you couldn't leave your room. And so our guys, 2 weeks not being able to work out, said, Coach, we'll go home and find a gym and get outside and work out. So yeah, we were 2 weeks gone, and then we had 1 day of practice and we played a game when they came back. I mean, just think about, like, you would never, ever think of doing anything like that in a normal year. So it forced you to, I don't know, just be appreciative and take it 1 day at a time.
There were a couple cool games. Well, actually, there was a lot of cool games last year, but at the end of the season, for me in particular, being a Illinois Wesleyan CCIW guy, the Illinois Wesleyan Wheaton game that was the CCIW championship felt like a Final Four game to me. Both teams were highly ranked. It was a great game. And then the coolest game was your game in Ashland against Trine. You were 1, they were 2. You had played all conference games. Almost everyone in the whole country had only played conference games up to that point. But all of a sudden, 1 versus 2 gets scheduled, which is, again, one of the cool things about last season is these random games could pop up. How did the Trine game get scheduled? How did that all take place?
Yeah, it's and again, our administration, our AD, our school just being willing to allow these games to happen was huge. Having that support, we almost had a game with Yeshiva. So for a couple months, we were trying to get Yeshiva, and we just couldn't make it work. The dates, the travel, hard for us to be able to go up to New York, and so I got an email from Brooks Miller, and this is where I just give Brooks all the credit in the world. That just said, hey, Coach, can you guys interested in playing? We'd love to do a bowl type game. And, we couldn't get out there, but just said, hey, would you want to come here? And, they did. They hopped on a bus. I don't know, maybe a 10-hour, maybe longer, 12-hour bus ride. They made a trip out of it. And I give them all the credit in the world. He didn't have to do that, but they came here and it was awesome. I mean, just to look forward to it. And we got a lot out of it. And it was one of those games too. Brooks grabbed our guys after the game. I mean, how many times does a coach do that after a loss, and complimented our guys? And that was really meaningful and something I'll never forget. And so I give him all the credit in the world, but it started with his email, and then both administrations, just having some vision to say this is a good thing for our players. And so they were able to experience that.
And I think the cool thing about that game is that both programs, you could say, didn't need to do that. Trine could have ended their season ranked number 2 in the country, kind of undisputed number 2. They had a fantastic season. And you guys could have finished ranked number 1. But what was cool to me is just the desire to compete and give student athletes that experience after what they had been through in such a tough year. I thought that was the coolest part for me, is in terms of what both universities decided to do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, again, like, cause we love, I mean, that's what we're in this for. It's not about what you end up being ranked at the end of the day. It's the experiences and the journey along the way, and the chance to get a couple more practices. And I think Brooks has the same mindset. And so, yeah, development. And even if you want to take the approach of this game will help everyone moving forward next year, it was like, how can we not do something like this? And, because we've got a pretty good winning streak at home here recently. And, so some people were saying, why would you put that on the line? It's like, you put that on the line every time. It's not about
Right.
That's not going to stick around forever. So
Fortunately, I feel like society, the world, the country, Division III, I think we're in a lot better place right now than we were a year ago. We were waiting for the next school to say they're not playing.
Yep.
And everyone was kind of pushed back, at least, most until January, whatever. But it feels like things are a lot better. And it feels like we're poised for, maybe the word normal isn't the right word, but much more normal season. I'm looking at the fall sports competing, football, etc. Seems like things are going very well. How, in terms of the pandemic, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty of your team. In terms of the pandemic, how are you feeling about this season being pretty like normal?
Feel good. I think it helps when you have a team. So our team is fully vaccinated. So that allows us, if someone does get sick, that it won't shut us down, so to speak. And it just gives everybody a sense of confidence. I think the ability to use a locker room again has been an awesome thing. I think it's one of the things that guys love about being on a basketball team, is being able to compete between the lines, but then be friends after. And something that we missed, and something that multiple guys said is probably the thing they missed the most about last year. I feel great. I feel great. It's nice to be able. Now we're wearing masks, pretty much indoors all the time, except when exercising. So it's just a great feeling to throw those off and do what we do.
And your Yellow Jackets come into the season ranked number 1 in the preseason D3hoops.com poll. I'm one of the 25 voters in that poll, and I had you one. It was a difficult year to vote because you don't know on more than half of these teams, you don't really know who's coming back. Now, the D3 Hoops crew did a great job of gathering as much as they could, but some teams we haven't seen play in a couple of years.
That's right.
And so you don't know, if you take like Emory, Wash U, like who's back? You had to really dig into that.
Yeah.
Randolph-Macon, Yeshiva, Marietta, Illinois Wesleyan, Platteville. That's your top 5. What does that number 1 ranking mean? I mean, I know that some coaches will say, "Oh, shucks, it's no big deal," and but what does that mean to you?
It doesn't. Well, we're appreciative that people think that highly of us, I guess you could say, and it's nice to be relevant, because I've coached some teams where we were fighting to be relevant. But being relevant today doesn't mean we're going to be relevant tomorrow. I think it means we got a bit of a bullseye on the back. I've been a part of some teams that have beat the number 1, and I know the level of detail and focus that you get from a team going into that week's game. And so, I think we've been used to getting people's, I don't want to say best shot, but we've been getting used to getting people to bring their A game. And I think this almost ramps it up a notch. So I wish you wouldn't have voted us, Bob, number 1, if I'm being totally transparent. And I've coached some teams that are certainly further along than this group that we have right now. But we do have some talented upperclassmen. And I like to think, it's not about trying to protect a ranking or anything like that. To me, this is how we break it down, because Dale Wellman is a good friend of mine, Nebraska Wesleyan, and they were unranked going into the tournament when they won the national championship.
Absolutely.
And so, the rankings don't mean a whole lot. It doesn't mean someone's going to lay down and give you the game. You've got to go out and earn it every day. And we're looking forward to that challenge. Like, we want to find a way to win the last game. And if we can do that, we want to problem solve, and we want to enjoy competition and strive for this learning and growth. And you can't control everything. So we'll see what happens at the end of the day. But yeah, I guess that's how I would sum it up.
And would you agree, Josh, that like parity in Division III is better than it's ever been? When I look back at, maybe 20 years ago or so, I think of like some of those, the Stevens Point teams that won it back to back in the mid 2000s with Jason Kelso and Nick Bennett. And you look at the Platteville teams under Bo Ryan, it seemed like the gap between at that point, number 1 and number 25 was huge.
Yeah.
But this year, as I look at this and I look at the last, I don't know, 5 or 10 years, the gap between number 1 and number 25 and down the road seems like it is much, much smaller. Have you found that, in your coaching role and seeing the teams that have come into your gym?
I think for sure. I think you've got a number of coaches and assistant coaches now, and colleges have added to those staffs and put, there's more full-time coaches than ever, which means they're attracting and working hard to attract really good talent. I think players continue to just get better. You got great high school coaches that have prepared guys. So anyone in the ODAC can knock us off. And you think about, you look at football D3, and you had that run of Mount Union winning, and I'm drawing a blank on the other one, but
Whitewater.
Yeah. And it's every year one of those two. And it's like everybody else is playing for third place, at least during that stretch. And in college basketball, anybody. And I do think it helps being from a great league, Seaside, like you said, CCIW and ODAC and a number of tough leagues prepare their guys for the battles and to solve different problems. So yeah, there's a lot of parity, which makes it exciting, though, I think, for players and coaches to know that you got to bring your A game or it's not going to go your way. Agree.
And let's talk a little bit about your team. You've got a loaded roster, and I've always felt that if you were going to have a preseason All-American return to a team, if you could pick what position that guy's at, in a perfect world, I think it would be a point guard. Yeah. And boy, do you have a good one. Buzz Anthony, he's a 5'11" senior. I believe he was a senior last year and is taking advantage of the COVID waiver, which is wonderful. The NCAA did that. He averaged 18 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists last year. I think he's a 2-time All-American now. Talk a little bit about your senior point guard, Buzz Anthony, and what he brings to the floor.
Man, yeah, we're going to miss him when he's gone. I will tell you that. And, certainly coaches in the ODAC are not excited about him being back. And you mentioned the stats, like 18, 5, 6 assists. Just when you think about that, I mean, he's really super unselfish. And if he could go for 10 assists, he probably would. We've gotten on him. I mean, probably the most that I yell at him is when he's not shooting, to give you some idea. True competitor, wants to win in every single thing that he does, whether it's ping pong or checkers. He's a basketball guy. So came from Spalding High School, chip on his shoulder, always one of the smaller guys in the gym, fighting for that respect. It's carried over into his game. But he also, when I say basketball guy, he wants to coach when he's done. And so he's just got this passion. Bob, I could tell story after story. I mean, one of them, his freshman year, I remember walking to the back of the bus. We're on our way to a game, and he's got pulled up like the NCAA stats.org. He's looking up the team that we're playing, and it's like, how do you even know about this website right now? I mean, this is something that coaches look at. He's a freshman. Bob, if you were going to watch us practice, you would see this guy engaged on every single possession. It's really crazy. his level of detail, how he coaches guys. He loves being on the leadership journey. So he doesn't just want to be a great player. He wants to be a great leader. And so he's grown and worked to grow in those areas, and be a player and leader that the other guys can count on. I agree with you 100%. If you're going to have a guy back that can really play, you want him to be at that point guard position. He makes others better, but he makes them better in practice too. He holds guys to a standard. He's developed this influence that gets guys in the gym more than they would be otherwise. So it's really, it's a blessing and a joy to coach him. And I've coached very few guys as talented and as hardworking as he is.
And there's a lot around him. That's the scary, and a lot of size too. I don't think your roster is online yet. And so if some of this is coming from the D3 Hoops preseason ballot information that gets disseminated to the voters, but Miles Mallory is back. He's a 6'5" forward, 13 points and 7 rebounds a game. He was one of your most valuable players last year. Talk a little bit about Miles Mallory.
Yeah, love Miles, another Maryland guy that played at Parity, so a good high school league, well coached, and he's got a great basketball IQ. With our two best guys, Bob, you mentioned Miles and Buzz, they love competition. Those guys are going to play one-on-one after practice as much as they can. And it's so interesting to me, like our best guys, they hunt competition, they stay late, but he's also got a really high basketball IQ where he can solve problems on his own. He can, we haven't needed to coach him on a lot of things. Like we've got our ball screen D, and Miles has become like our best coach when it comes to ball screen D because he just has a feel for it. Same thing with post defense. He's had to maybe pick up some things along the way because he was undersized and guarded bigger guys. And so, yeah, it's awesome having two guys like that. And again, at that position too, hard to find good fives. There's so few of them out there. So to get a guy that's, comes in a bit of a tweener, slip through the cracks type guy, that's a really a beast at this level.
And several other key guys back. Now, one of the guys that didn't make it into the D3 Hoops spreadsheet thing, but I think he's back, is Ian Robertson returning?
He is. Yep.
So 6'7" forward, 12 points, 4 rebounds a game. Between Mallory and Robertson, and we'll talk about some more guys here, but great size in 6'5" and 6'7" returning. What does Ian Robertson bring to your squad?
Yeah, lefty shooter. That has a quick release, and he's 6'7", so he can get it off. He's a guy you can do a lot of pick and pop with. It's really hard. He helps space the floor. He gives more space to those guys because if you give if you start helping off, he can make you pay. But he's added a lot more to his game, whether it's kind of posting up or mousing, and good rebounder, and just a winner. Like just loves to get better and loves to help his guys win. Josh Talbert was I believe our third or fourth leading scorer. Yep. Another big, strong guard that can really get downhill, finish around the rim, can make shots, and a good passer, like unselfish guy with some vision.
You mentioned Josh Talbert, David Funderburg. He's another 6'7" guy, so more size. Funderburg missed some games somewhere along the way last year, didn't he? Do I have that right? Am I remembering correctly?
Yep. He tweaked his back. He missed a couple. But yeah, he's been, he and Buzz came in together 5 years ago, and he's played in every game pretty much in his college career. So a lot of experience when you add those older guys up.
So you look at this, and there's some more guys too that are returning. But, I've always thought that to win a national championship, you have to be balanced. I've seen very few teams get to that game, whether it was Salem or now Fort Wayne. Kind of undersized. I think you can have a 6'5" guy in the post, but you've got to have some presence down low, right? And you've got great balance. I've always thought if you can have a stud point guard, what a luxury that is. You have that, and you have to go into the year, Josh, feeling pretty good about the fact. You've got a really talented veteran crew taking the floor, and I guess thus the number 1 ranking.
Well, I don't know what the exact term is, but it's like please never satisfied is probably describes our attitude around here. And just we got to keep hammering, we got to keep pounding the rock. our defense nowhere near where it needs to be. So it's like, we got to guard people too. There's a lot of other great players out there that we're going to see. And our schedule is certainly, I mean, if we don't bring our A game, Bob, there's a chance we don't even make the tournament if we don't get, playing where we think we can. But we got work to do. We got to close those gaps, and excited about the challenge.
And just let me talk about the schedule, and maybe another question. We'll wrap this up. And thank you so much for your time. But your schedule is awesome. And you're participating in an event that I love, the Great Lakes Invitational. Really good friend of mine and a great D3 Hoop supporter, Ryan Whitnable, is the host of that event. He's the creator of that, kind of the founder. And what an awesome tournament that it has become. So you will face Emory and Marietta at that tournament. Talk about the decision, if you would, Josh. Scheduling is interesting. Yeah. I love the programs that go out and play other great programs. You don't have to do that. I mean, you could sit there and try to go to Selection Sunday with 1 or 2 losses. That's one theory, and others to go play. The decision to play in that kind of tournament and face those kind of teams. How do you get to that decision?
Yeah, I mean, Nathan was a great mentor for me, and I know he had some guys that, just the idea that we want to test ourselves, play anyone, anywhere, anytime. But that's when you learn the most about yourself, is when you get uncomfortable and you get challenged. I think growth happens in the extremes, and if you only lose 1 or 2 games, then I think it's going to be hard to have the growth that you need when that time comes. So for me, we've learned, from every loss, we certainly take lessons. But every time we get challenged, I mean, playing Johnny K at CNU for the last 8 years, I mean, every time I'm stealing something, because you prepare for them. You're watching 4 or 5 games and you're like, man, how do they do this so well? And you just start to pick things up. So, playing SWAT 2 years ago in the tournament, we took a ton from that game. A quick story from that game is, second half adjustment, we're up at the half, and Landry comes out and he puts his starting 4 or 5 man even on our point guard, because he could, because that guy could really move. And, we didn't adjust, or we didn't figure it out in enough time. And it was a great move. And we're playing TC and J, fast forward a year, and we do the same thing to those guys in a tournament game because they're cooking us, and we're down at the half, and we put our 5 man on their point guard, and switch the matchup. So the point being, you have to, by playing those games, you learn about your team, and you get better. And we want to be at our best in February and hopefully March. And so we have to play those games to get better. Now, there is that other side too, in Division III, it's not like the top 6 teams in the ACC all make the tournament.
Right.
That doesn't happen. And so hopefully I'm not thinking that it was a crazy move, but certainly we are testing ourselves at the ultimate level, I think, this year, with these early games. Well, with our non-conference schedule alone.
That it's a great point that it comes at potentially a cost in Division III, because in a great league like the ODAC, you're going to lose conference games. You just are. And, look, if you go out and you were to lose to Emory, Marietta, and New Jersey City, all of a sudden now it's a little bit of an uphill battle should you need that Pool C bid. So kudos to you for scheduling. I think scheduling is just fascinating. I think some top programs choose to not go after these games. I think like Yeshiva has had a hard time finding these type of games.
That's right.
And I know that they have been looking very hard. Just a couple more things. First, I just want to ask you about the ODAC. When I think of the great leagues in Division III, the WIAC, the CCIW, the NESCAC, the UAA, the Ohio Conference. I think the league in Iowa now with Nebraska Wesleyan is one of the great ones, but the ODAC is one of the great traditional leagues. A number of programs have made it to the Final Four, household name type programs. What's it like battling in the ODAC night in and night out?
It's battling great coaches that have great identities, Tom Palumbo, Dave Macedo. We could go on and on. Clay Nunley. I mean, these guys, again, like I talked about, when you're watching them on film, I'm humbled in a lot of ways, because I'm like, man, if these guys had the talent that we have, I don't know if I'd ever beat them. I think that to myself sometimes. They're just really well coached, connected, execute really well. And that's not even mentioning the Lynchburg and Chris McHugh at WNL. So it's a great league. We've got great rivalries. Caleb at Hamden Sydney in a short time has really, brought those guys to a super competitive level where, that game can go either way. So I think it's fun, though. I think it's what makes it worthwhile, and it brings a lot to your preparation, your practices, because that if you're not preparing the right way, then you're not going to have a result that you can be proud of. So I love it. I don't always love it, as we're preparing, but I think it's been overall, it's great for our guys. It's great for the league to have these matchups and to have these coaches that have been doing it for so long and doing it at a high level.
In terms of this season in the ODAC, you guys will be the favorites. Roanoke, would Roanoke on paper be kind of the team in that number 2 preseason spot, would you say, Josh?
I would, because there's a couple. It could be close, but they've got so many guys coming back, and they're so just such a gritty. It's going to be a top 10 defense. You can almost bank on it. So yeah, but nipping at their heels, Virginia Wesleyan returns a lot of guys, and Dave does an unbelievable job. Lynchburg, who was in the championship game, probably returns 2 first-team all-leaguers, and Hillary does a great job with his squad. So it will be interesting to see. We actually have an ODAC call later today, and we haven't voted on it yet, but it'll be interesting to see what happens.
It will be. Well, it's going to be a great season, Josh, and I really appreciate your time. I know that this time of year is crazy. You're not only preparing for the season and the first game, which is not that far away now, but this is a big recruiting time of year. So you've got kids coming to campus and all of those things. You're probably going to see kids. So thank you so much for making this work. Before we wrap up, I'll just turn it over to you. Any final words for, Yellow Jacket fans that are tuning in, Division III fans? Any final thoughts as we head into this incredible season coming up?
Yeah, for all the Yellow Jacket fans, November 10th, 7 p.m. Wednesday, we want to Pat Crenshaw, and since it's been about 18 months since we've had anybody in there, we'd love to see everybody that's close by come out and support. And for the D3 fans, Bob, I appreciate you. I want to celebrate you for this interview, this podcast, what you're doing to bring more awareness and to give fans a chance to follow teams and learn a little bit more. I was able to, it's a busy time, but I was able to listen to a couple and enjoyed listening. So I had a recruit in here a couple weeks ago, and it was funny because he said D3 gets a bad rap. He was trying to understand, why does D3 get, and I said, we do get a bad rap. And we shouldn't, because there's great people, super successful people that really love this game, follow this game, really putting their heart into it. We don't do it. We don't work any less hard than if we were at Duke, or we wouldn't work any harder if we were at Duke. I think coaches and players, and I think there's so many teams around the country that can say the same thing. And so, yeah, celebrate you for bringing some awareness to that. And, we'll keep fighting to enhance the reputation, so to speak, around the world.
Well, hey, I appreciate it. And that's Josh Merkel, the head men's basketball coach at Randolph-Macon. They're ranked number 1 in the preseason. They got shut down in 1920, sitting there in the Sweet 16. Last year, their season ended with a bowl game against Trine, no Final Four. This should be a pretty normal year, though, and Josh's club will get a chance to test themselves, and we'll see where that goes. It should be a great season. Josh, I appreciate it so much, and I hope to see you in a Division III gym somewhere along the way this year. Thank you, my friend.
That'd be awesome. Thank you, Bob. Take care.